Welcome to Session 6, Preventing Business Money Loss. This is part of Section 2, Managing Your Business Money, Section 2 of the Business Handbook. Now, let's cover the objectives that we're going to talk about in this session, Session 6. And you see that by the end of the session, the participants will have done these three things. First, connected the prevention of business money loss with good biblical stewardship. Number two, analyze three stories about how business money is lost. And number three, identified ways to control and minimize business money losses. And this should take us about 30 minutes. Now, part one, as usual, is a review of what we covered in session 5, and I'll expect that you'll do that with your participants separately. We're going to move on to part 2 immediately. Connecting the prevention of business money loss with stewardship. So we want to connect business money loss with good stewardship. And we'll read on here. We know that businesses can lose money in many ways. Today, we're going to talk about the ways businesses lose money and how to prevent business money losses. Let us think back to the story of the 3 servants. We learn that it is important to wisely manage the money God has given us. What did the master say to the servant who received the 100? I'm going to skip ahead to the last servant who received the 100 francs, right? You recall that the one who essentially loses money, and why does he lose money? The one who receives the 100 talents, or the 100, let's call it Rwandan francs in this case, right? That they buried the money. They dug a hole and they buried it in the ground. And they could have earned money just even if they didn't do anything with it. If they'd given it to a banker, they would have earned interest, right? So by improperly using the money that was entrusted to him, the servant lost interest that could have been used to reinvest in the master's enterprise. And so because we are responsible to wisely manage the money that God has given to us, we must control and minimize business money losses. I'm going to share 3 stories now. We're going to share 3 stories that will help us to consider our business decisions. Listen to how each woman loses money from her business. So now in part 3, let's look at 3 stories. First is the story of Peruzzi. Okay, and you've got a picture of Peruzzi in the back. You can post it on the wall, and you tell the story of Peruzzi. So let's read together. Peruzzi is a candy producer. She receives her loan, so she takes out a loan and takes some of that loan money to buy milk that she uses to make candy. She's happy to get an extra low price. Danger, right? Danger flag here. Extra low price. Why? But she is happy to get an extra low price from a new person in the community selling milk. On her way home, her mother-in-law asked to borrow some money. Peruzzi is worried about what her husband would say if Peruzzi does not give his mother the money that she's asking for. So Peruzzi gives the remaining money of her loan to her mother-in-law. When Peruzzi gets home, she opens the milk and finds it is very old and spoiled. She does not have enough money left to go buy good milk so she can make candy. She wonders how is she going to make her loan payments and buy food for her family. Let's discuss Peruzzi's experience. All right, a couple of questions here. What are some good decisions that Peruzzi made for using her business money, right? So she took out a loan. What good decisions did she make? Well, she looked for better prices for milk. So she was eager to save money on her raw material expenses. So that wasn't a bad decision to look for a better price, but let's keep reading. What are some of the poor decisions that Peruzzi made for using her business money? Well, she ran out of money to buy the milk for making candy. She purchased poor quality materials and gave her mother-in-law a loan and gave her money from her business loan, and then that left her with no money to buy any other supplies, right? So a couple of things went bad here. She purchased poor quality milk. What could she have done differently? She might have checked out that new supplier, right? They said that they were new to the community. How did she know she could trust that supplier? And we find out she couldn't trust the supplier. The next thing is she felt pressure, social pressure, to loan her mother some money from that business loan. But then once the milk went bad, that left her with no money to buy good milk to make candy for her business. So should you take out a business loan and then give that money to a family member? No, probably not. Social pressures to do that, to do what your mother-in-law asked for, but she should have come up with a way to tell her mother that she just didn't have or couldn't loan her that money. And then number 3, what can Peruzzi do differently to better manage the money God has given to her? Well, number 1, as we talked about, be sure that the supplier that she buys from has good quality materials. Do not give loan money to anyone, right? If you loan money out for the business, you put it in the business. You don't re-loan it out to anybody. It's for your business. Peruzzi can explain that she has a loan agreement to only spend the money on her business needs. She can discuss the problem with her Solidarity Group members to help find a solution. Now, story number 2. And we post the picture of Dancila and say this. The story of Dancila. Dancila used all of her loan money at the city market buying new and different products to bring back and sell in her community. So she's a reseller. She's buying other products at a larger market, maybe a wholesale market. She's going to sell them back in her community. She bought oil, honey, and small notebooks. She was excited about selling new products in the community. The honey and oil sold well, and Dancila even sold some to friends who did not have cash but promised to pay the next week. Unfortunately, nobody bought the notebooks. People did not like the small size. One day at work, Dancila's young child started crying and Dancila tended to her. She was distracted and forgot to put the lid on the honey container. The next day, Dancila found that ants had infested the honey and it was ruined. Customers came to buy honey, but Dancila had none to sell. She is worried about how she's going to repay her loan and feed her family. So now some questions as a result of Dancila's story. What are some good decisions that Dancila made for using her business money? What are some of the good decisions that she made? Well, that's right. She used all of her loan on her business. She took all of that business loan and plowed it back into her business as you're supposed to. She didn't loan it out to any family members. She didn't use it for family expenses. She plowed all that money back into the business as you should. She added new products to her business. That's a great idea, right? If there's a need for those products, that's a pretty good idea. We're going to find out about it. Was there a need for all those products? What are some of the poor decisions that Dancila made for using her business? For using her business money, For using her business money. What are some of the poor decisions that she made? Well, the notebooks did not sell well, right? Now, why is it? Dancila had not checked to ensure that there was a demand for them. She bought certain notebooks. They were too small inside. That was not the market need, apparently. Nobody bought them. They wanted bigger size notebooks. And her honey was spoiled because she did not store it carefully. She sold some of her products on credit is one of the third things. So she didn't protect her investment in the honey that she bought to resell. And unfortunately, the ants got in it and spoiled it. That was a poor decision. And then thirdly, she sold some products on credit. I will mention this now that selling on credit is almost non-existent in many, certainly in many parts of Africa and many parts of the developing world. Credit is not developed like it is in the developed world. It's not a concept that is common at all in the developing world. So she went kind of against the culture and sold some products on credit. Now, what can Dancila do differently to better manage the money God has given to her? Well, one, she can check with potential clients to determine whether they're going to purchase the products that she wants to sell. Maybe she should have checked and just bought one of those small size notebooks to see if there was a market for those products, right? Also, she should think about, can she afford to sell on credit? What if people don't make good on that credit sale? What if they never pay her back? Are other people selling on credit? Is that a common practice? That could be an innovative practice. if people are good for it, but how do you know if people are good for the credit that you extend? There needs to be some way of vetting or checking to make sure that that is a good risk to take. She could also protect her stock. In this case, it was the honey against spoilage. She was not careful about storing that honey carefully. Third, let's look at the story of Susan. Okay, and read with me here. Susan made a good profit with her previous loan. She put some of the profit into the bag she uses for her business expenses. So she uses a bag system here, not boxes, but bags. That's fine. With her earnings and a new loan, Susan decided to buy a cabinet to display a nice, clean way the bread that she sells. She bought some tea and sugar to sell as well. She worked hard to find paying customers by selling at the city market and going door to door in her community. So she's going out there and really selling door to door. Susan sold more products and earned more money than ever before. By being aggressive in her sales tactic, going door to door, she sold more than ever before. When she checked her cash to make her plan for the next week, she found that a lot of money was missing. Uh-oh. So was her husband. He came home later that night with a new radio and new clothes. All right, here we go again. What are some good decisions that Susan made for using her business money? What are some good decisions? Well, she kept her business earnings separate to reinvest in the business. That was really smart, right? Separate bags in this case, not boxes, but bags for her business expenses versus her household expenses. So she kept separate places for her money. She purchased a cabinet to display her products, right? A better way of displaying her products, making them look more appealing than perhaps her competitors. That's smart. She bought additional products. She looked for good customers at the city market and went door to door in selling her products in the community. Wow, she was really aggressive in her sales tactics. That's great. So those are some really good decisions that Susan made. Now, what are some of the poor decisions that Susan made in terms of using her business money? Well, she kept the money where her husband found it, and she did not share the importance of how to invest her business money with her husband. So he must have thought it was available for whatever he wanted, and as we see, he went out and he came home with a new radio and some new clothes. So he took some of those business profits, right? And he bought new radio and new clothes and spent the money instead of reinvesting in the business. Now, what can Susan do differently to better manage the money that God has given to her? Okay, well, she can explain to her husband the obligation to repay the loan, right? That she took that money out in the loan to reinvest in her business. It's not for her husband to take that money and spend it on his own personal needs. She can request that he repay the money. Maybe that'll show the kind of the pain, the commitment it takes to take out a loan, and he won't do that again. She can request that he respect her business money and discuss any needs for that money with her before taking it. That he shouldn't just take money he finds in the house. She can remove the temptation by keeping as much of her money as possible in a savings account where it's safe and in the bank, right? So we see here through these stories that there's many ways that businesses can lose money. And Chalmers gives us kind of 4 categories. 1, poor quality production or supplies, right? That was the bad milk that was purchased for the candy production. You'll recall that. Or poor stock management. Remember the honey that spoiled because ants got into it. It wasn't properly stored. Ants got into it and she couldn't sell the honey anymore. Selling on credit. Sounds like she probably didn't collect from those credit sales. That's taking a risk. Can you afford to take that risk? And then number 4, personal pressure to spend business money on other items. Loaning the money to a mother-in-law or not protecting the money well, and your husband finds it and spends the money from that business loan on personal needs. We also see that there's usually something you can do to prevent these losses, even when the cause of the loss is not under your control, right? So, there are ways you can protect that money. We've talked about some of them. That's in part 4. I'm not going to discuss that part. You can go through it with the participants of your, the people in your group, and you should. But we're going to move on to part number 5. Commit committing and having your people in the group committing to preventing business money losses. So what we do here again is we ask them to make a pledge that as a new business owner, a small business startup, or perhaps someone who has an existing business and wants to improve upon it, we ask them to take another pledge, and it's that I will honor God by preventing leaks and losses in my business, right? Business losses can be prevented if you identify the causes and develop ways to prevent them. So you have to think about how business losses come about, and you have to think about ways to prevent them. Next time, we're going to come back and briefly talk about Session 7. Well, actually, we're going to talk about Session 7 right now. Session 7, discussing managing credit sales. And that's part of managing your business money. It's part of the second section of the business handbook. And the reason that I'm going to have you go through this on your own, and if you want to go through this session with your participants, that's fine. But the reason I'm going to skip it is that most places around the globe, outside of developed countries, do not have sales on credit. It's just, as we've said before, a foreign concept. It's not a concept in place yet. Most people are not willing to take the risk on credit sales because income can be hard to come by in some of the developing world. So I think you're going to have to check your context wherever you're working through your local church, wherever you're doing this training. If credit sales is a common concept, then by all means you should cover this session, this lesson. But if not, I would probably skip it. So we're going to skip it. I'll leave it to you. It's a very simple session to conduct and learn, but I'll trust that you'll do that based on your own assessment of the context and area and locale that you're in. So that concludes Section 2 of the Business Handbook, Managing Your Business Money, right? And we've learned all kinds of great things in managing your business money. Let me just remind us of the 6 sessions that we've covered in that 7th session we just discussed. First, we talked about separating household and business money. And we talked about the container box concept, or using bags or separate pockets, or some way of separating, right, cash coming in from the business, your revenue coming in, business expenses, how you're going to manage the operating expenses you have and the business expenses you have to operate that business. Boxes for household expenses. Maybe you want a box for a savings fund. So we talked about separating household and business money. We also talked about calculating your profit, how to do that. We talked about investing in the business, taking out a loan and investing in the business. And then we also talked in Session 4 about using the profit from your business. If your profit continually increases, which is a great thing, what are the decisions you have to make about how to use that profit? To use that profit and plow it back into the business? To use that profit for maybe some increased household expenses that you might have? Or do you use that profit for creating a savings fund for unexpected events, right? For later on. And then in Session 5, we talked about using a business loan for your business and how it's important that you take all of the business loan, all of it, and use it for investing in your business, and that you don't take out a loan larger than you need. You only take out what you need because you don't want to pay interest on any excess loan that you take out. Take all that business loan in just the right amount and put it back into your business. Then Session 6, we talked about how to prevent business money losses. Session 7, we didn't go into in depth. It's about managing credit sales and selling on credit, which is uncommon in most of the developing world. And we said that we're going to allow you to assess your own context wherever you are, where you are with the local church, and determine if they actually sell on credit. If they do, then you should go through Session 7. If they don't, then you probably should not. I look forward to seeing you next time when we go through the 3rd and final section in our business handbook, which is increase your sales. I'll see you next time for that new part of the handbook, increasing your sales. See you then.